Chapter 9, Part 2 of the Voyage of the Beagle. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Shubda Garani. The Voyage of the Beagle by Charles Darwin. Chapter 9, Part 2. Santa Cruz, Patagonia, and the Falkland Islands. 16th. I will now describe a short excursion which made round a part of this island. In the morning, I started with 6 horses and 2 gauchos. The latter were capital men for the purpose, and well accustomed to living on their own resources. The weather was very boisterous and cold, with heavy hailstorms. We got on, however, pretty well. But except the geology, nothing could be less interesting than our day's ride. The country is uniformly the same undulating moorland, the surface being covered by light brown withered grass and a few very small shrubs, all springing out of an elastic peaty soil. In the valleys here and there might be seen a small flock of wild geese, and everywhere the ground was so soft that the snipe were able to feed. Besides these 2 birds, there were few others. There is one main range of hills, nearly 2,000 feet in height and composed of quartz rock, the rugged and barren crests of which gave us some trouble to cross. On the south side we came to the best country for wild cattle. We met, however, no great number, for they had been lately much harassed. In the evening we came across a small herd. One of my companions, St. Jago by name, soon separated a fat cow. He threw the bolas and it struck her legs, but failed in becoming entangled. Then, dropping his hat to mark the spot where the balls were left, while at full gallop, he uncoiled his lasso, and after a most severe chase, again came up to the cow and caught her round the horns. The other gaucho had gone on ahead with the spare horses, so that St. Jago had some difficulty in killing the furious beast. He managed to get her on a level piece of ground by taking advantage of her as often as she rushed at him, and when she would not move, my horse, from having been trained, would canter up and with his chest give her a violent push. But when on level ground, it does not appear an easy job for one man to kill a beast mad with terror. Nor would it be so if the horse, when left to itself without its rider, did not soon learn, for its own safety, to keep the lasso tight, so that if the cow or ox moves forward, the horse moves just as quickly forward. Otherwise, it stands motionless, leaning on one side. This horse, however, was a young one, and would not stand still, but gave in to the cow as she struggled. It was admirable to see with what dexterity St. Jago dodged behind the beast, till at last he contrived to give the fatal touch to the main tendon of the hind leg, after which, without much difficulty, he drove his knife into the head of the spinal marrow, and the cow dropped as if struck by lightning. He cut off pieces of flesh with the skin to it, but without any bones, sufficient for our expedition. We then rode on to our sleeping place, and had for supper carne con cuero, or meat roasted with the skin on it. This is as superior to common beef as venison is to mutton. A large circular piece taken from the back is roasted on the embers with the hide downwards, and is in the form of a saucer, so that none of the gravy is lost. If any worthy alderman had supped with us that evening, carne con cuero, without doubt, would soon have been celebrated in London. During the night it rained, and the next day, 17th, was very stormy, with much hail and snow. We rode across the island to the neck of land which joins the Rincon del Toro, the great peninsula at the southwest extremity, to the rest of the island. From the great number of cows which have been killed, there is a large proportion of bulls. These wander about single, or 2 and 3 together, and are very savage. I never saw such magnificent beasts. They equaled in the size of their huge heads and necks the Grecian marble sculptures. Captain Sullivan informs me that the hide of an average-sized bull weighs 47 pounds, whereas a hide of this weight, less thoroughly dried, is considered as a very heavy one at Montevideo. The young bulls generally run away for a short distance, but the old ones do not stir a step, except to rush at man and horse, and many horses have been thus killed. An old bull crossed a boggy stream and took his stand on the opposite side to us. We in vain tried to drive him away, and failing, were obliged to make a larger circuit. The gauchos in revenge determined to emasculate him and render him for the future harmless. It was very interesting to see how art completely mastered force. One lasso was thrown over his horns as he rushed at the horse, and another round his hind legs. In a minute the monster was stretched powerless on the ground. After the lasso has once been drawn tightly around the horns of a furious animal, it does not at first appear an easy thing to disengage it again without killing the beast, nor I apprehend would it be so if the man was by himself. By the aid, however, of a second person throwing his lasso so as to catch both hind legs, it is quickly managed, for the animal, as long as its hind legs are kept outstretched, is quite helpless, and the first man can with his hands loosen his lasso from the horns and then quietly mount his horse. But the moment the second man, by backing ever so little, relaxes the strain, the lasso slips off the legs of the struggling beast, which then rises free, shakes himself, and vainly rushes at his antagonist. During our whole ride we saw only one troop of wild horses. These animals, as well as the cattle, were introduced by the French in 1764, since which time both have greatly increased. It is a curious fact that the horses have never left the eastern end of the island, although there is no natural boundary to prevent them from roaming, and that part of the island is not more tempting than the rest. The gauchos whom I asked, though asserting this to be the case, were unable to account for it, except from the strong attachment which horses have to any locality to which they are accustomed. Considering that the island does not appear fully stocked, and that there are no beasts of prey, I was particularly curious to know what has checked their originally rapid increase. That in a limited island some check would sooner or later supervene is inevitable. But why had the increase of the horse been checked sooner than that of the cattle? Captain Sullivan has taken much pains for me in this inquiry. The gauchos employed here attribute it chiefly to the stallions constantly roaming from place to place, and compelling the mares to accompany them, whether or not the young foals are able to follow. One gaucho told Captain Sullivan that he watched a stallion for a whole hour, violently kicking and biting a mare till he forced her to leave her foal to its fate. Captain Sullivan can so far corroborate this curious account that he has several times found young foals dead, whereas he has never found a dead calf. Moreover, the dead bodies of full-grown horses are more frequently found, as if more subject to disease or accidents than those of the cattle. From the softness of the ground their hoofs often grow irregularly to a great length, and this causes lameness. The predominant colours are roan and iron grey. All the horses bred here, both tame and wild, are rather small-sized, though generally in good condition, and they have lost so much strength that they are unfit to be used in taking wild cattle with the lasso. In consequence, it is necessary to go to the great expense of importing fresh horses from the Plata. At some future period, the southern hemisphere probably will have its breed of Falkland ponies, as the northern has its Shetland breed. The cattle, instead of having degenerated like the horse,